after a government investigation found the allegations were baseless. Thousands of staff at Greggs bakeries are to get more than £17 million in bonuses. It's after the high street chain saw profits rise by 27% in the last year. Staff can expect to see the extra award in their pay packets at the end of the month to recognise their hard work. And, if we can say so, it's the icing on the cake for the workers who already get a share of profits each year. Scientists have revealed the case of a hyper-vaccinated man who's reportedly received 217 COVID jabs. The 62-year-old from Germany received the staggering number of vaccinations for private reasons, he said, over 29 months. Researchers heard about the man in a newspaper and asked if they could study his body's response to the multiple jabs. They say, despite his extraordinary hyper-vaccination, no noticeable side effects have been found so far. And finally, if you were a fan of soap operas in the 90s, you can probably remember this. Baywatch became the world's most watched TV series during its original run from 89 to 99. And now those red bathing suits and slow-motion jogs along the California beach are set to return in a new series expected to premiere this autumn. It's going to see a whole new generation of lifeguards embarking on daring ocean rescues. The original series made superstars of its cast, including David Hasselhoff and Pammy Anderson. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Wednesday's top stories with three comedians. I'm Simon Evans, that's one. Joining me tonight, GB News diversity champion Leo Kearse, and recently back from paternity leave, it's Steve N. Allen, who is doing the chest feeding in your absence then tonight.
Well, don't worry, I express.
Oh, do you? That's good. Listen, I used to have a little range of, bottles lined up for me in the fridge to go through the night. We can all share that kind of stuff. That's right, yes. I genuinely used to have a bottle of Remy Martin as well on the mantelpiece, which was my little treat if I had to get up in the night. So that would elevate my mood, because they can tell, even when they're not getting it directly from you, they can tell if you're cross about it.
That's science, is it?
Right, let's take a look at our front pages. We have the Daily Mail, I believe, up first. Yes, 5 SAS soldiers in murder probe over jihadi death and Michael Gambon's will. The Telegraph, tax cuts spark election talk. There is Jeremy Hunt. The Guardian, Hunt defies public services alarm with pre-election budget tax cuts. Predictable response from The Guardian. The Express, Hunt's tax cut gamble will put £900 in workers' pockets. iNews say that Labour fears Tory budget trap as Hunt cuts NI, that's National Insurance, rather than Northern Ireland, by 2p in giveaway. And the Daily Star, squirting snot up your conch could cure hay fever. Those were your front pages, and those are the elephant traps provided by Jeremy Hunt avoided tonight. So we start with the Daily Mail, Leo, very serious story.
Yes, so they have 5 serving SAS soldiers are facing possible murder charges over the death of a suspected jihadist in Syria. So it's a case that's provoked fury inside the Special Forces, understandably. So the top brass have alleged that the troops used excessive force and should have arrested this man instead. But a suicide vest was found nearby. He was kind of playing dead. He wasn't moving, and they were worried he could detonate a suicide vest. With reason, obviously, considering a suicide vest was found nearby.
He could do that while he was lying, faking death.
Or he could wait for him to come over and then detonate the suicide vest and blow them up. So they shot him and to incapacitate him. And this happened on the battlefield. This wasn't in custody. This wasn't a prisoner of war that was executed.
The rocket Gibraltar stuff. from many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, considering in Syria and any other war we get involved in, we're raining death from the air via drones.
How long ago was this then? Are we talking sort of 2012 or something? Sorry?
This is 2 years ago, though.
Oh, just 2 years ago. Okay.
So we're still involved. Special forces are still involved in these conflicts that we've apparently sort of pulled back from.
Yeah.
But this, there seems to be a feeling amongst the forces that this is top brass, you know, trying to sort of make a name for themselves or get a gold star and say, look, we sent this. Because in the army today, the top brass seem to get rewarded for punishing soldiers rather than standing by them.
Or indeed recruiting them, which is not an insignificant challenge at the moment. I mean, if you're thinking you might get done for murder on top of the rest of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've, funnily enough, been listening to an audio book on the history of the face of battle, from Agincourt through Waterloo and the Somme, and among other things, the circumstances in which killing a prisoner and so on have been considered. Obviously, it's a tricky question. It always has been.
But killing a prisoner seems less of a tricky question than this situation as described. It's very easy to say, no, what you should have done is arrested. With hindsight, knowing that you could have done the arrest without an explosion, it's very easy to put that argument together. But I don't know, until you're there, until you've got that decision to make, and it's not as if it would be the first thing you do that day and the only thing you've done in a war. They would have all of the context around you of what's been happening. So I don't know. It feels a bit cheeky to try and.
You've got to say. I mean, I presume the what do you call it? The balance of probability is the benefit of the doubt is given to the soldiers. But maybe even within that, I have seen. I expect you have as well on social media quite a lot of body cam footage from arrests attempted in America, where obviously police have guns and a similar situation, and people reach for weapons and so on. Things can happen very, very quickly in that circumstance. It's one thing to be going, don't move, don't move, don't move, but...
And also the guy was hiding behind a bush, or was motionless behind a bush. So, I mean, he could have saved himself by saying, wait, I'm over here, I don't have anything. You know, he didn't...
And if he was playing dead, then they presumably thought there was nothing to be lost or gained anyway. Moving on to Wednesday's Guardian, Steve. Yeah,
slightly less depressing. Hunt defies... I've done it, same. I managed to say it. It's always close, isn't it? Hunt defies public services alarm with pre-election budget tax cuts. What a boring headline, I'm afraid. But it's all about 2 pence off national insurance. The plan is... But there was no way you couldn't do... Well, we don't know yet. But we'll find out very soon. There'll be 2p off national insurance. It's been promised or talked about for so long. If he would have said tomorrow, oh, by the way, no change in income tax or national insurance... That would have been it. Done.
Well, I mean,
we'll do inheritance tax.
I certainly expected that when they took over from Truss, basically, it was like, well, they're going to try and mount the pain on us, front load the pain so that they can ease it off in time for the election.
Although it was in January we got a national insurance cut, and this is why this is not a good idea, because you do the surveys, no one remembers it. No one goes, I tell you what, those Tories are really good. I'm barely even paying national insurance. No one even thinks of national insurance. Take it off income tax, because that's a headline. It is more cost-effective to take it off national insurance, but no one cares. So it doesn't have the impact.
You're right. It's the feel-good factor they used to call it, didn't they? And, of course, Tony Blair famously had it in his first administration, bequeathed it, really, by Kenneth Clarke and his wonderful budgets for John Major. But it's been an awfully long time since anyone has felt anything other than quite, profoundly depressed by the economic circumstances they're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we seem to be paying more tax than ever. We're in more debt than ever, and our public services are getting worse than ever. So what's happening? The balance is completely out of kilter. I mean, I think what we need to do, we need a Javier Milei to come in. Unfortunately, we're not getting one. We're getting Keir Starmer. We need Javier Milei to come in and just be like, afuera, and just cancel all this stuff, all this money, all this public sector money gets spaffed on, like the radical mosques with hate preachers. We can stop giving taxpayers money to them. How about that? The Arts Council, we can stop giving money to that. If you want to go and see the ballet, how about you pay for it instead of taxing a bus driver for it?
I mean, I agree with you, and I grew up with my father explaining to me repeatedly, pretty much every news broadcast, that nobody expected to subsidise his hobby, which was building model aircraft. So he didn't see why he should subsidise the opera. I suppose we are paying for the pandemic, though, aren't we, still? But the problem is the productivity hasn't returned to normal. People aren't getting back to work. Vastly more people are on sick leave. Vastly more people are out of work, one way or another.
We need to make it much tougher to, like, literally hit people in the legs with planks. And
I'm there with that. To be honest, I would vote for that party.
The last budget before an election should normally be a giveaway. This is barely a giveaway. The extra £900 in the pocket has already been spent on how much things are more expensive thanks to the inflation we've had.
Yeah, so you're right. It's slightly less scalding water on the back of the neck, isn't it? That's about the best you can say of it. Telegraph front page, Leo, what have they got?
So they have that menopause is marketed as a disease to make money for drug companies. Wow, and wait till you find out about other illnesses and other conditions like depression and things like that. But commercial interests are medicalising the condition, which is part of healthy ageing. The menopause is part of healthy ageing. It's totally normal. This research paper in The Lancet says they're just doing it. They're taking a medicalised view of menopause so that they can prescribe hormones and all kinds of treatments and make money off it.
I am slightly torn on this one. I'm 58. A lot of the women I was at university with have been through the menopause, and a lot of them have sworn by HRT. Some of them have gone private, some of them had it on the NHS. They've had different protocols. It does seem to be particularly valuable if you want to stay in work, to be honest, because I think it just smooths out some of the bumps that you might be otherwise subject to, you know, hot flushes in meetings and mood swings and so on. It's very, very dangerous territory for three men to sit around discussing at the best of times. I wouldn't want to deny anyone it, but on the other hand, I do agree with you, the medicalisation of normal, within-range spectrum of, I mean, as you say, mental health, generally speaking now, the extent to which even the faintest flicker of sadness, you know, that crosses your child's eyes before you know it, they're on.
Or if you get slightly distracted, then you've got ADHD.
Yes,
and
exactly, Squirrel.
But, I mean, they might be right that it's being treated like a disease, but we don't just medicalise or treat diseases.
No.
So there are many things that happen as you get older that are perfectly normal. They're not positive, I suppose, but you do get a treatment for it. I mean, even as a bloke, it's perfectly natural. Your prostate is going to get a bit bigger. If you live long enough, it's going to get bigger than you.
That's true. If there was some way of sucking that out through your nose at about 65, I think that would be a massive stride forward. Talking of which, can we
pick that orifice?
Can we very quickly address the squirting snot up your conch hay fever remedy?
So apparently having a snot transplant, says the Daily Star, will get rid of hay fever. No thanks, I'll have the hay fever.
Do you have hay fever though?
No, I don't.
You see, that's it. That's why you're able to be flippant. I get hay fever, and I never used to as a child, but my best mate used to get it around exam season, and it knocked about 3 grades off him. Unquestionably, it is absolutely miserable. And now I get it. And it's weird. It's not about sneezing or even itchy eyes. It's a really leaden, thick, sluggish kind of feeling.
We need intestinal parasites, because they're foreign protein, they have to release chemicals that moderate our immune system.
Right.
And that reduces all the... Apparently, a third of us suffer from autoimmune-related disorders.
I can believe that.
You can sniff someone else's snot. They did trials. After about 3 months, the effects wear off. You have to keep doing this.
I remember when our baby was about 6 months of age, somebody showed us there was this little kind of reverse pipette you could use to suck the snock out of it, and then you squeeze it away. And I went, no, it's much easier to do it like this.
Sucking out the poison.
It's marvellous. No greater love hath a man. That's the front pages done. Join us after the break for your regular dose of trans outrage and the collapse of the NHS. 2 utterly distinct stories there, of course. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school, and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true. I said, you know, you may adopt the church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind. For which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me, but I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing. It's
an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position? Well,
he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it. In a sense, I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess. Not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head, but he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously through no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to Prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to Prevent for essentially teaching.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Wednesday's newspapers with me, Simon Evans, Leo Kearse, Steve N. Allen. So, Leo, we will kick off this section, and to no one's great surprise, perhaps, the Daily Mail have evidence that so-called trans, so-called healthcare, so-called doctors are well aware that many of their clients are in no position to be calling the shots on their own surgery.
Yeah, so trans healthcare doctors are exposed, admitting that some patients are too young or too mentally ill to understand the consequences of their treatment. This is leaked messages from the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH. Might be related to psychopath, given how they're behaving. So they reveal how medics have acknowledged behind the scenes that teenagers given puberty-blocking drugs did not always realise that this would mean they could never have children. And obviously, you know, when they're given the puberty-blocking drugs, not only does it wreck their body, lead to osteoporosis and, you know, various other things, and depression and, you know, more mental health issues. But then it often sets them on a pathway to having the transgender surgery, which can be, you know, really quite brutal and quite horrifying, and not even, you know, particularly successful. It's not like you get, you know, this sort of God-given penis. You get like a weird balloon penis made out of your arm and stuff like that. Yeah. And these guidelines from WPATH influence the NHS, and I mean, this is going to be the next big medical scandal. Yeah. And the real victim here is the taxpayer. So we're paying for all these children and other people to have transitions, and now we're going to have to pay. A few years on, they're going to be like, "Whoa, I was misinformed by my doctor. I was misled. I'm suffering all these things." They're going to want to detransition, and they're going to want to sue the NHS. It's like, I didn't want to pay for it in the first place. Now I'm having to pay for it and then pay for people to detransition.
It's a very, I mean, I suppose to try and play devil's advocate to some extent, Steve, if you've got a child that is expressing extreme discomfort, gender dysphoria or whatever, you can understand that maybe saying, well, listen, if they absolutely know, you know, that they are supposed to be a girl and their body is wrong for them, you can understand that. But there have been we've had so many issues over the centuries where we've come to understand that children are not old enough to give consent to sex, they're not old enough to vote, they're not old enough to drink alcohol. How can we possibly think that something as extraordinarily decisive and definitive and irreversible as this could have been okay? Yeah, I think even if you are at your core thoroughly trying to spend all of your time supporting the trans people, you would want there to be more rigour.
This is not something that should be done lightly, because then you end up having the wrong people affected. You're not saving trans people, you're potentially harming other people who weren't trans. It's often, these debates end up being not about trans people. The same thing happens when you talk about toilets. It's not about trans people, it's about people who want to sneak into toilets who aren't trans, who are using the loopholes. The same thing here. It's not about the actual trans people that could be helped by a system, but if the system is so poor, it just ends up medicalising. We talked about medicalising the wrong people. You're helping no one. I know it's a complex thing, and I know Andrew Doyle's doing a special on free speech on Sunday.
He is. That's right. Yeah.
So there's so much to dig into this. It's going to be fascinating.
It does also strike me, and I mean, this is maybe naive, but I would have thought there would be other ways for them to overcome their dysphoria, their looking in the mirror problem in the short term. You know, to be brutally frank about it, effectively strap-ons or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There are ways you could use medical prosthetics.
I've seen a lot of those films as well.
Yeah, but it's like there are ways you can dress. I mean, I remember my son used to have this is maybe I'm being too flippant here, but he had a sort of Batman shirt that had a kind of six-pack and big pecs built into it, do you know what I mean, in foam, that made him think he was like a, why not do, well, it feels like it's a bit of a safer shortcut, a couple of years until you're a bit older and you can decide what you want to do.
And now he knows he's not Batman.
But in the meantime,
his core, he's not Batman.
As soon as he hit puberty, he realised it was just a fad.
As soon as I was like, there's a mugger out there and I want you to go out and sort it out. Further medical news now on the Telegraph, Steve, and perhaps the one thing that might save trans kids from irreversible procedures is the waiting list.
Crumbling NHS to push record numbers to private healthcare. More than 800,000 expect to pay for their medical services. This is when we play a clip from 2010 of some MP being asked, are you trying to underfund the NHS so it's being privatised by the door? Not at all. Cut to. Turns out the phone call was coming from inside the house all along. Plot twist. So the number of private hospital admissions has increased. It's gone up to 664,000 according to data. You can't blame people because there's an upper limit on a waiting list that you can cope with, and that's how long you've got left to live.
And also, I mean, it's very closely tied to the same demographic shifts that made us prone to COVID, isn't it? It's an ageing population. I think something like 50% of NHS budget is spent on people who are in the last 18 months of their life. So obviously the more people, the larger the percentage of your population are from that. You know, that was never foreseen, even 10 years ago, I don't think.
A lot of this is understandable because the procedures that are up there on the list of commonly paid for are things like cataracts, knee surgery, hip replacements, pain ones. But on there is diagnostic endoscopies. Now, I had one of the smaller ones, the sigmoidoscopy, and it was a couple of years ago. I had some sort of scare. Spoiler alert, I don't have any of that cancer luck. But if it's cancer, you want to find out early. Don't put that on a waiting list.
No.
And I got the letter, I remember, and it said you're an emergency case, you should be seen within 2 weeks, turnover when your date is 9 months later. Why even put it on the piece of paper to make me feel worried about it?
You should be seen within 2 weeks. Not going to happen, but just so you know. Telegraph again, Leo, having established just how much spare cash and capacity is sloshing around in the NHS. Good to see they've got their priorities straight.
So a Scottish NHS board has made a formal apology over its historical slavery links in Jamaica. Apparently, as recently as 1997, they were taking a boat over to Jamaica, rounding people up and making them wash the hospital and paint the window. No, they weren't. Basically, they're trying to make amends. This is NHS Lothian. They want to make amends for Edinburgh's Royal Infirmary. I've been treated there, a very good hospital, or it used to be anyway, being funded by a Jamaica slave plantation. It was left in 1749. So this is stuff that happened quite a long time ago.
Before the French Revolution. I mean, I feel that should be a cut-off point. If you're going to have one, that would be
literally a cut-off point. The one thing it's famous for is all the head trick.
So this is, given that we've just heard what a powerless state the NHS is in, not only are people going private, but, even if you want to get seen and dealt with by public services in this country, you've got to use, it's like in the Soviet Union, they had a thing called blat, which was cajoling and harassing and bribing until you got the service you needed, and we've basically got that in the UK at the moment. So why they're wasting time and money doing this sort of virtue signalling apology for slavery that happened hundreds of years ago, I have no idea.
I suppose one should say that this is essentially an apology. There's been a meeting, there might be a letter issued, not a huge amount of money has been spent, but it's certainly drawn focus, isn't it?
Yeah.
People's time and efforts. And also, these things very rarely end with the first apology, do they?
Oh,
there will now be a demand for reparations of some sort, I suppose.
This might, because one of the things they've done is they've commissioned some art as part of the reparations. And that's going to be the thing where descendants of slaves are going to say,
OK.
Oh, you shouldn't have. Oh, no, that's fine. You keep that stupid statue.
Independent now, Steve. What sounds a lot like the night's first scape squirrel from Sir Mark Rowley. Are you familiar with the scape squirrel?
Yes, I was here when you launched the scape squirrel. Met Chief warns violence against women needs to be treated like terrorism, so we will end up having marches for people who support it. So Mark Rowley said the future...
Well, we sort of already do, in fact. I mean, like the specific... Yeah, but anyway.
So he said the future governments need to give the same level of funding to deal with this issue of violence against women. You're the Met Police. If you'd like to cut violence against women, tell the people you employ to stop doing it.
This is my point. I mean, this is why I say it's a scape squirrel, because they're talking about cousins, aren't they? They're talking about the specific Wayne cousins that they continue to employ, and he moved from force to force, despite flags so red that they could have been seen, you know, from several miles away.
You wouldn't swim near that.
No, exactly. And he's trying to blame some kind of wider cultural or dysfunction in the budgetary allocations.
And also, violence against women is, I've not Googled it, but it's already illegal. So I would have presumed they were already trying to stop it.
And he was known as the rapist, colloquially, this chap. I mean, it's ridiculous to try and kind of blame anything other than their own abject failure to respond to obvious cues.
And also to draw parallels with terrorism and say it needs to be treated like terrorism. Like, terrorism is generally motivated by an ideology, whereas nobody's, you know, committing domestic violence or whatever out of an ideological drive.
No, absolutely. You don't get people going, I'm thinking of becoming a rapist, and then it's up to you to kind of go and report that to your superiors. It's a ridiculous comparison. I mean, you can spend money on it, obviously, but as you say, he's basically just trying to, like, create a massive cloud of squid ink, as far as I can see, instead of taking responsibility. Disgraceful. Over to the ongoing Gaza crisis with The Guardian now, and through gritted teeth, they have news from the UN Special Envoy.
So the United Nations has found convincing information that Hamas raped and tortured Israeli hostages. I don't know why it took them till now to say this. I mean, I think we've all seen the evidence. But so the UN Special Envoy on Sexual Violence and Conflict has reported clear and convincing information that some women and children hostages held by Hamas had been subjected to rape and sexualised torture, and that there are reasonable grounds to believe that such abuses are ongoing, because obviously they're still...
That's the key, I think, isn't it? Yeah, because I think everyone had accepted that there was incontrovertible footage of it happening when they actually invaded Israel. Yeah, so
it's still ongoing. Although if you listen to people on the left, Owen Jones and your typical Guardian commentator, you'd think it wasn't happening at all. They think that rape only happens. It's when a man puts his hand on a middle-class actress's leg, whereas this is not.
It is an opportunity now for Owen Jones to give his view on this, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, very credit where it's due. This is The Guardian, though. Actually reporting this, so give him a bit
fair play.
Widge of credit. Small.
We've made it halfway before we start tonguing The Guardian. In part 2, we'll be looking at the latest Orwellian dystopia to hit the hiking trail with North Face, and why Tangam Debonair's feet don't touch the ground.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
OK, we're back to headliners for the second half, or the third quarter, if you want to go American style. Steve, the Telegraph now. Any GB News viewer who has made it this far with their blood pressure within range might want to consider looking away.
This is the best story. Want money off North Face clothing? Then you have to complete a racial inclusion course first. They're offering 20% off if you do this course. It takes about an hour. Or an hour, but it's 20% if you're doing a big shop. Maybe you sit through it. They're doing an allyship in outdoors program. I don't think that the people who sell outdoors wear are racist. They've got one company called Blacks. So if ever there's a place that's not like this, but they want to try and foster a deep understanding of the unique challenges of people of colour face when they go outdoors, this follows on the news story of people saying that the countryside is racist. And I'm not sure that it is. Some people say they don't feel welcome in the countryside. That's the countryside. It's got electric fences and people with shotguns, people saying, get off my land.
That's right.
No one wants you
on top of a horse.
Yeah,
which
no
is particularly intimidating.
And there's a story in here of someone who said she was in a shop buying some outdoor wear, didn't quite get the attention from the shopkeep she wanted, and therefore thought maybe I'm not meant to go in the countryside. Why are you making that leap? If the thing stopping you is your perception, you've got a little bit of responsibility to fix it.
And also, I would say, I mean, I had a look at this quiz, and it's very obvious what you're supposed to say. So if you want to get your 20% off, you can hold your nose and just click diversity benefits us all, and only through encouraging all peoples and races and creeds can we have a fully enriching. It's very easy. You're not going to learn anything. Do you know what I mean? You're not being confronted with some, oh, actually, it turns out that, I don't know, people of colour develop certain diseases because they don't get enough fresh air and exercise or something. It's just all the standard platitudes arranged in a sort of series of flowcharts, and you just go, yes.
They're standard platitudes presented as fact. So, you know, the fact that diversity, equity and inclusion always enriches and makes things better, and you can't criticise it, you can't question it, you can't say that it leads to siloed demographics, and you can't say that diversity is taking over the conversation. Even though those are valid opinions. If you click those, then you're wrong.
Well, but it's only 20%, so I think you could afford it. Go in, take the test, answer all of those. Pay your rates for 20% and go, but look at them.
Yeah, but I'm not going to give money to a company that assumes that I'm racist and I need to be educated.
I agree. And actually, I have spent a lot of money with North Face in the past, mostly in the sale, but still quite a lot of money. I've always felt it was a bit of a sham anyway, because it's always in a shopping mall, isn't it? And most of their, 80 gram down jackets don't see the North Face of the Eiger, or they see the North Face of the escalator. That's about it, or maybe the terraces at a rugby game. But it's fashion gear anyway, really. But if they wanted to take on some cause. If I thought they were supporting actual diversity, like biodiversity, you know, the Great Lakes or Patagonia or the Congo, do you know what I mean? Like, where you might go on an expedition. Yes, that's great, but just encourage. It's nothing to do with them whether black people want to go hiking or not. It has nothing any more than it would be appropriate for like a reggae night at the Camden Palais to start kind of going, we need to get more middle-class white men in here. You know?
Like... And also, if any of those middle-class white men said, I don't feel welcome, then they'd be condemned as racist and bigoted.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, like, for some reason, if anybody says it about the countryside, then it's like, oh, we must pander, we must, you know, bend over backwards and try and fit around your feelings.
So, sorry, North Face, you lost 3 customers. The Daily Mail now, Leo, and some spicy corn snacks have been getting a little bit spicier than they were expecting.
Yeah, so Doritos has fired a transgender activist who appeared in one of its promotional videos after being alerted to her sickening old tweets. When they say her, they mean his, including one where he wrote about doing depraved things to a 12-year-old, which, you know, kind of, I mean, when you get crimes like that, like paedophilia, it's generally a sort of male thing. So that's you know, one clue that the transition hasn't been quite as successful as they might imagine. But yeah, Doritos told Rolling Stone, the magazine, not like Mick Jagger, on Tuesday that it would no longer work with Samantha Hudson, who'd appeared in this promotional video, saying it had been unaware of her previous inappropriate posts. It's like, just do a bit of due diligence. Just go through their Twitter, see, have they advocated for paedophilia? Because this person has. I want to do... this is what the Samantha Hudson has said.
Ivan Gonzalez Renedo, as he was then.
Right, yeah. So I want to do thuggish things to get into a 12-year-old's censored. Another post says, in the middle of the street in Mallorca in panties and screaming that I'm a nymphomaniac in front of a super beautiful 8-year-old girl. Perfectly normal woman behaviour there. Yeah, very convincing transition.
Why would... I mean, apart from all of this particular, you know, the depth of depravity in this individual, why do Doritos want a trans person at all?
Because everybody's gripped by this mania. You've got to, like, call the countryside racist. They don't want to sell anything. You've got to call the countryside racist.
Sort of yellow, synthetic sort of smudge of flavour that you chew on while watching sports games, right?
Yeah. They could have had a little cartoon character, none of this trouble.
No, exactly.
Unless whoever drew it really got into some...
Well, that is, all joking aside, I mean, that has been a discussion, hasn't it? The influencers are already being created. Artificial intelligence... video influencers on Instagram. There are Instagram accounts now of influencers that are totally fictional, that have no backstory. Right. Nothing about them will emerge because they have been created by a graphics card.
But they'll have been coded by woke people, so they will also advocate for paedophilia.
Oh, I can't wait to see the first one of those. That's good. Staying with the Mail, Steve, a woman MP who rejoices under the name of Tangam Debonair is complaining that the House of Commons benches are too high for her tiny little legs. I think Jacob Rees-Mogg has shown her how to deal with that, hasn't he?
So it's now Labour frontbencher who branded Rule Britannia alienating says that it's sexist because the chairs are too big, the benches are too big.
Yeah.
And to be
She's
fair,
5'1", right?
That's the thing I'm going to point out. It's not sexist because many with the average height of women could sit on those benches then by the looks of it. It's heightist, maybe it's ageist because your average 12-year-old.
Furniture is like heightist to some extent, isn't it? There are built-in suppositions about the human. Yeah, it's like you don't have to study Vitruvian Man to understand there are certain...
Yeah. And there's a certain solution to it as well. She says if she sits all the way back, legs dangle like Ronnie Corbett doing the monologue.
Yes.
And sit forward then. In the same way that...
I wrote for Ronnie Corbett many years ago, wrote a couple of sort of monologue jokes for him, and I met him in a Starbucks in the West End, and I was not ready for how tiny he was.
Really?
I know, it's like... He was so tiny. I had to stop myself from lifting him up to get onto the stool because we were sitting at those stools and he couldn't really get up. He was sort of wriggling up. So I can picture Tangan.
But just to say, don't swap them out because it'd be a waste of money.
Yes.
It's our taxpayers' money. Show Labour, show that you're good with money and buy booster seats.
Yeah. Yeah, or get some platform... heels, right? That's what she wants her feet to touch the ground,
MPs that don't moan about stupid stuff.
Yeah, it's extraordinary when you think what they used to have to put up with.
Yeah.
Female ancient history academics in massive sense of humour failure as the British Museum post a misguided joke, Leo.
So the British Museum has been accused of sexism after a misguided Roman Empire meme. So basically it suggested that single women can attract a man by looking confused at its Roman exhibition. So this is a reference to, there's a TikTok trend on social media where wives and girlfriends were asking their male partners how often a day, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And they're saying every day.
Every day.
And so this is a reference that it's making fun of mansplaining, because the men would then explain the Roman Empire to them. So it's saying, as sort of bait, you can.
It's actually pretty media savvy, isn't it, for the British Museum? It's pretty on the.
But people love getting offended by stuff. So I do it every day. So they've also likened the display to a Nazi rally because there was 5 red flags.
Well, where do you think they got the fasces from? I mean, that was the point, wasn't it? Mussolini was trying to revive ancient Rome as an aesthetic and as a unifying principle, and to rekindle the pride that the Romans had in their great city. It's not coincidence.
Men do mansplaining. You've just done exactly this. And you're in it, well, Mussolini. You should get out of the museum. Yeah.
I don't know. I do think sometimes these academics just try and get their own head above. The woman who complained about the fascist imagery is now writing a book about Rome, it seems, Right. So you can see, everyone tries to latch on to these things. But I do feel bad for the British Museum. They've attempted to use a little bit of sass, a bit of snap.
Yeah. It was a great joke. It was funny. It wasn't at all demeaning or,
Well, I'm going to go and watch it, actually. And not wearing North Face either. Staying with feminist carping, Steve, The Guardian have the latest on the least interesting gap since Watford.
Climb off the fence, why don't you? No equality for working women in any country in the entire world, according to this study. The global gender gap, not pay gap, gender gap. This is bigger. It's far bigger than they previously thought. No country in the world affords women the same opportunities as men in the workforce. This one I found interesting. It found that women, on average, enjoyed just 64% of the legal protections that men do. I don't really even understand that.
No.
I can't get my head right, because any law that's in the UK is genderless.
Unless it's getting you, trapped in a lift or something. I don't
think there's a law against that, is they can't stop me.
I mean, they did say, if you read into it, this is about a worldwide thing, and the headline result really is that things have improved dramatically in the developing world, but although they have improved in principle, they lack the teeth, right?
Yeah, they don't follow through.
They don't follow through. That's another place.
The whole idea, the whole concept of a gender pay gap. Any CEO could instantly boost his profits by only hiring women. So I don't think it exists.
I think you're right. The end of part 3. See us if we're still here for the final section for Woke Lego, Miserable Britain, and Bejeweled Gnashers. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are 2 sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... I mean, this is learning stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she
Yes.
isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
Well,
if
no,
you say
they
that,
won't,
will
they
they? Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners for our final quarter. Times now, Leo. Lego would like us to construct a fantasy world where their product is yet another front in the culture war rather than an assault on middle-aged bare feet.
Yeah, so according to Lego, according to a scientific research paper conducted by Lego, girls are less inspired to be creative than boys because they're more likely to be called sweet or cute instead of cool or brave. So a study found that girls as young as 5 were being creatively stifled, with 2/3 saying the language they heard made them worried about making mistakes and felt like they shouldn't experiment. So girls as young as 5 are learning that you should moan and try and not take accountability, but blame other people for the fact that you're not creative. But yeah, this is ridiculous. It's not science. This is researchers coming in with an agenda and saying, you know, oh, women are different, girls are definitely being held back by gendered language. And it's like they're not coming in being like, you know, completely balanced and open to any possibility.
They're not following up with educational outcomes. They're just saying to little girls, do you sometimes feel like you would have been a rocket scientist if you hadn't been put into, you know?
It's like the North Face quiz all over again. They're sitting them down and, like, you know, hitting them. Listen, this is the answer. This is the right answer.
Steve has probably got a slightly more nuanced view.
Oh, yeah.
But the stereotype threat, this is called, right?
Yes. Well, and some of their presumptions are wrong at the start of this research.
Yes.
I think women do get called brave when they wear something that shows the midriff after a certain age. So the word brave is used in a different way, isn't
My wife was accused of being brave with colour once, and that woman was never spoken to again.
So there is a difference. I'd take brave as a compliment. A woman takes brave as how very dare you. But no, come on. Maybe there's a link between being called cute and not being an expert in rocket science. But you'll go on to be a stripper or be on OnlyFans, and there's a lot of money, so enjoy being called.
I'll tell you one thing that Lego could do if they want to encourage more innovative attitude towards the potential offered by their own toy is stop entirely marketing it as, like, unipurpose. You are going to build the Death Star, you are going to build the Great Pyramid, you are going to build Tracy Island. In my day, you had a bunch of bricks, right?
Yeah.
And you could try and make up what you want with them.
So I wouldn't leave a vent 2 metres wide near the big exploding bit. Not that much of an idiot.
That's where the shape-shifting lizards get in. Here, however, is a poll I suspect we can all agree with. This is in the Mail, Steve.
Uzbekistan is the only nation more miserable than Britain.
Yes.
But don't worry, Britain, if we try hard, we can get to number 1, and I'm sure we will do soon. They do a world well-being chart to measure happiness. They look at mood, outlook on life, self-esteem. I mean, we moan. It's what we do.
Yeah.
We're really good at it, actually, so I'm surprised we took second place. And it's not good to see Uzbekistan and UK getting similar scores, a depressing place, weak economy, corrupt leaders. But the UK is where we live, and we love it nevertheless. Yeah, thank you.
I will say, a couple of things occur to me. Firstly, I think it's quite seasonal in Britain. I don't know when this poll was taken. I think we have unusually profound seasons, don't we?
Yeah. We don't get in America and places like that. They get a proper winter with snow and ice. You can go outside, whereas we just get consistent cold rain for a long time.
Winter sucks. My son says this in a way that suggests he's learned this at school. But the other thing is, I do think we're in a bit of a trough at the moment. Maybe it's because we're coming to the end of a Tory administration that's 14 years of complete failure to deliver on any of its promises.
I'd say the end of Western civilization.
Yes, there is that seeping in as well, isn't there? There's a lot of ruin in a nation, but I feel like the flint is coming through the top of the pitch at the moment.
But it's not even that they look at. It's what bothers me. They're blaming phones, like everyone blames phones. Let me use my darn phone. They say that in areas where you have good access to the internet, young people are getting more depressed. The access to the internet can't make you depressed, otherwise people who use TalkTalk would be the happiest ones. We know that by now.
I saw a thing the other day about the young person's dictionary, which no longer has words like heron and finch and moss in it, and they're all words like committee and broadband and log off. I did feel a bit sad about that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It does feel like, I don't know.
Skibbity riz.
Yeah. Anyway, back to The Guardian now, Leo. Millions complain that everything in London shuts within 2 hours of dusk. But Spain has a different problem, it seems.
Yes, so Spain's late-night eating culture poses a mental health risk, according to a minister. A Labour minister says it's madness that people are still working in restaurants at 1 a.m, but opposition and tourism groups are defending the country's nightlife. So this Labour minister said, a country that has its restaurants open at 1 o'clock in the morning is not reasonable. It's madness to continue extending opening hours until who knows what time. This is a voluntary arrangement. People are choosing to go and work in these restaurants. In Spain, still has the siesta. So, you can have that nap in the afternoon and then you're ready and you eat later and it's
Have you been there?
Yeah.
It's great, you're right. And you go out and maybe if you're English, you go and hit the town square at 10 p.m. and it's quiet. Yeah. And you're like, oh, this place is dead. And then around midnight, suddenly it's full of scooters and young people having a wild time. We have got about 50 seconds for this final story, Leo. The Guardian, this strikes me as a grotesque descent in barbarism and primitive notions of beauty, but perhaps you can explain.
So, from £35 crystals to £30,000 diamonds, the jaw-dropping rise of tooth jewellery. So, despite us all being poor, young Britons are somehow finding ways to stick diamonds in weird places. It's Imogen Campbell's. I mean, she's obviously posh. It's her first time having tooth gems. She booked the appointment. She had cold feet the first time. She was a bit hesitant because she works in financial services. But now young people have got, tattoos all over their face. Yeah. They've got, gold teeth. So, yeah, why not?
The teeth are almost offensively ornamented.
Why not graffiti your teeth as well, Imogen? Why not completely destroy that face?
You've got 4 seconds, Steve.
Mick Hucknall used to have this in the 80s, and it just looks like you've been punched by someone with a signet ring.
It's true. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. Daily Mail, 5 SAS soldiers in murder probe over jihadi death. Telegraph, tax cuts spark election talk. The Guardian, Hunt defies public services alarm with pre-election budget tax cuts. The Express, Hunt's tax cut gamble will put £900 in workers' pockets. iNews, Labour fears Tory budget trap as Hunt cuts, that was the tricky one, NI by 2p in giveaway. Daily Star, squirting snot up your conch could cure hay fever. Those were your front pages, and that's all we have time for. My thanks to Leo Kirsten, Steve Allen. Andrew Doyle will be here tomorrow with Nick Dixon and Scott Capurro. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, good night.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Showers today, but they are fading away and most will have a dry night. A little bit of fog and frost likely in the southwest. Low pressure is out in the Atlantic. It tries to move in, but it's getting blocked and stopped by a big area of high pressure. That is the dominant feature, and it is allowing a bit more cloud to drift into the east. We've seen some heavy showers across the southeast. They are drifting away. Still a few scattered showers here and there through the night. A lot of cloud in eastern England and eastern eastern Scotland, clearer skies further west. That will allow it to turn quite cold. A touch of frost through rural parts of Wales and southwest England, and some freezing fog patches around, so maybe affecting the M4 and the M5 first thing in the morning. Could take a few hours to clear away. Generally quite a grey day again in the east, particularly on the east coast, with a breeze freshening here through the day. A few scattered showers over eastern parts of England, a bit of rain at times in eastern Scotland, mostly over the hills, and some showers creeping into Cornwall later, but much of the west dry and bright through tomorrow with some decent spells of sunshine. 11 or 12 here. Colder in the east where it stays cloudy, and that cloud likely to stick around on Thursday. We'll see a few more showers, I suspect, on Thursday over parts of southern England, then developing through Wales and the Midlands. Some heavy downpours are possible. They'll be hit and miss, but do watch out for a lively shower on Thursday. Again, many places dry, some sunny spells in the south and west, fairly glum and chilly in the east.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven, and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail, and some of us just abroad. You know, just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in